Hello guys, if you're looking for a speed farming druid build on Diablo 4, I'm happy to introduce you to my Tornado Werewolf build. You'll see that you can quickly do T80 and that you can try your way for the last breakpoint. I'll explain everything in that video, and also, if it's not done already, don't forget to subscribe. For the skill, you want to play Hurricane in order to debuff your enemies. You also have the Grizzly Rage, which will be a wolf skill, and after that Cyclone Armor for the increased non-physical resistances. You have the Blood Hole, which will increase your attack speed but also heal yourself, and Storm Strike as a basic attack. We won't be using it too much. After that we have Tornado, our main skill. For this build you must be playing the Tempest Roar in order to allow Tornado to be cast when you are in a werewolf form. Then for the armor, you want to increase armor when you do damage, and you can take on it some stats and physical damage if you can. You can also consider this unique armor, but you lose a bit of sustain. For the glove, +4 to Tornado is a must, and you can also have some addition to critical damage. You'll want the increased duration of the Grizzly Rage by 5 seconds. For the pants, damage reduction when you do a basic attack, don't forget to do one basic attack every 5 seconds. If you don't want to do so, you can also take the increased damage reduction when you are in a werewolf. You'll want stats on it and damage reduction. For the boots, also stats and the fact that you get movement speed when you are unstoppable. I forgot to mention that you can also consider Temerity if you wish to swap for this ancestral legendary pants. For the weapon, attack speed when you land a critical strike with a core skill, and on it you want increased core skill damage, vulnerable damage, damage to close enemy, and some willpower for example. For the totem, it will turn your ultimate into a werewolf skill, and you also want cooldown reduction, stats and damage reduction. For the ring, takes everything that will increase your critical damage, and you'll also want some lucky hit. It's not mandatory to get critical strike chance because you'll have the Earthen Might passive most of the time, so you take it on this ring, and on this one the fact that Tornado will stick up to 3 targets, it will help you to clear nightmare dungeons faster. Lastly, for the amulet, stats, cooldown reduction, and the fact that you will increase your core damage based on your fortify amount. To finish this part, I'll let you have a look at my current stats. For the gems, you'll want damage reduction while fortify and increase critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies, and if you are in non-leather, you'll want increased armor. If you are in leather, you'll want to have increased critical strike damage, the barber to stack your damage then explode, and the last one, pulling enemies when you use your ultimate. For the Spirit Boon, damage reduction, increase critical strike damage, increase the duration of ultimate skills, cooldown reduction for your ultimate, and healing on critical hit. For the ability, you just want 2 points here in order to unlock Tornado, then you want the vulnerable just here, and the fact that you will increase your damage here. You also want some move speed, and you can put 3 points here even if it's not mandatory to increase your critical strike chance against close enemies. After that we have the barrier with the increased value and the hole with the increased attack speed. You also take the passives and this one which will increase your damage to distant enemies. Then you have the Hurricane with the damage reduction, increased critical strike damage against poisoned enemies and poison enemies. Lastly, you have some increased damage, our ultimate and the fortified passives. It's important to get both of these in order to always be fortified, and you want to have this one which will reduce the duration of CC effects. Of course, the K passive with the Earthen Might. For the Paragon setup, you first want to have increased damage in Werewolf, and then we'll get this node which will increase critical strike damage for Storm skills. After that we have some critical strike damage here, and this one increasing also critical strike damage. You go on your right in order to get this node which will give you some spirit, and you have this glyph, the fortify one, to increase your damage while fortify. On your way you take this one for the werewolf skill damage and critical strike damage, and this glyph which will increase damage to close enemies. It's the malice board, but we won't be taking this node. So you go back here, and at the top of it you want to have increased damage after spending spirit, some spirit here, some core damage here, and Fang and Claw in order to boost the blue nodes. You go on the right, we won't be taking this node, and we have our last glyph, increased damage to poison enemies. This glyph is interesting because you have a better value than Exploit on Vulnerable. For the gameplay, you can basically just jump into enemies if you have your ultimate ready. When you apply damage and hurricane to them, it will greatly reduce the damage that they do. Just be careful if you see a pack of 5 or 6 enemies, you'll need to kite a bit if you want to easily kill them. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget that as usual you have the builder in the link below it and everything on SlashingCreeps.com.